Welcome back to the Glint Standard. Today we're talking about turning an idea into a pitch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it all starts with an idea, but then
Good idea, bad idea, does it matter?
I mean, usually you want the good ideas. Those are usually
I've seen
the
some
best.
really bad ideas win.
Well,
So there's a really good pitch, right?
really good pitch. That's why the show Shark Tank, I think, exists, because it's it's all about pitching.
Is it?
Because it could be a terrible idea, but it still wins sometimes.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I think about if you watch, I just said like I'm 20 years old. It's really frustrating. But if you're watching, say, a TV commercial or you see a billboard and it's terrible, that's a terrible idea that they got across somehow.
They pitched it.
And I go, I want the guy that sold that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Really good sales guy at that point.
Helps
good
a lot.
sales guy.
Helps a lot. Or a girl.
Well, yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
So when it comes to having a really good idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say it really doesn't matter until it's being pitched extremely well, right? Because you could have a bad idea that's pitched really well and it wins, but if you have a really good idea and it's not pitched well,
right?
I mean, it's gonna flop, right?
Yeah, it's super frustrating. It happens a lot in our industry.
Mm.
There are a lot of really good ideas on ways to solve problems for clients.
Yeah.
And agencies are really good. Typically, when you're pitching on the agency side anyway, you're going up against the best of the best because, you don't have 10 agencies pitching. They get narrowed down.
Yeah.
So it comes down to fit a lot, too, and reading your audience a little bit. And delivering based on what you think they need to hear to win.
Well, I would say, I mean, it's obviously a mixture, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that you're not just explaining the idea extremely well, right? But you also want to adhere to the audience because we know most sales really is just about appealing to the audience that you're presenting to at that point.
And presenting the information in a way that they can connect with it,
right?
The decision maker.
And it's, I mean, you have the balance between the emotional side of it and the business side of it, right? Especially when you have a really good idea, you want to make sure that the CEO is going to care most about, like, does it increase revenue? How is this going to help our business grow? How's all that, right? Let's say it's a social media campaign. The social media person's going to be like, oh my gosh, is this do I have to stay up on weeknights?
And platforms we're using, am I familiar with them? Does it make sense?
Like, they get stressed,
well, right? They're also going to test you, though, if they're really good at their stuff, too.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you really know what you're talking about? Let's dig into the weeds a little bit here.
So I think it's, you have to, you're not always going to have a perfect audience in a perfect room that everybody's all the same and it's one story and it makes it super simple.
Haven't seen it yet.
No. Nope. You always have, like, the analytical person, but also the really creative person, and then the person who cares most about business and revenue and knows all their numbers, right? And so it's like you have all these different dynamics in the room. So I think pitching is really an art, right? I mean, it really is. And being able to communicate is really that art, right? Being able to communicate effectively.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing, it's even when you're doing work and say it's design work or a proposal, whatever it is, the pitch is exactly the same way. You get so close to it that a lot of times you can't see maybe some of the challenges that might come out of it.
Right.
You're loving it, which is great. That's where that passion comes from, and that's how you deliver a great pitch. But having outside eyes look at it and go, okay, I get where you're trying to go, but it doesn't make sense here.
Yeah.
It's not delivering the way I think you intend it. So when you talk about it, it's great. But if they're following along, I think they're going to miss it here. We need to maybe rethink that piece of it. And you don't want too many people throwing opinion in there.
Right.
You'll never get done.
Right.
But it's about trying, based on our audience, what we do know about them, maybe if we say it this way, it'll connect more. And really having good conversations around that more than make that bullet point blue and have it come in second.
Right.
At the end of the day, that really doesn't matter that much.
No, and I think it's, especially when you are pitching, those little minute things like, oh gosh, that slide didn't have transitions on it. Like, at the end of the day, people might go, ooh, that was off.
The designer type person is going to see that
Right.
if they're in the room. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it usually isn't the thing that makes or breaks the deal going through, right?
Not.
Like
Absolutely
people are
not.
like, okay, there's going to be challenges. People are human. Like that's just going to be the nature. So one thing that, I've always noticed is people are typically good at one form of communication. So like there's different types of pitching, right?
Okay.
You may have like a meeting. We've been talking more presentation style, but there's also over the phone, email.
They all matter. Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of
The
different
elevator
ones.
pitch.
The elevator pitch.
The
yeah.
30-second, I caught you in the elevator. What am I going to say to make you go, I got $500,000 right here in my pocket. I was waiting for somebody to tell me that I needed to use you.
Yeah. So how
Doesn't
do you
really
do that?
work.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of a pre-formed elevator pitch.
Yeah.
But I think the purpose behind it is correct. It's about trying to, when you don't have a lot of time,
Very
identify what's unique about you
Yeah.
and your business.
Yeah.
Right, that you're representing.
Yeah, and I would say most people are typically good at least one form of communication like that, right? It could be, and nowadays you even have to include like texting, right? I don't think you really pitch that way, but
Yeah.
maybe we're
Maybe.
getting there. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you have that. You have video conferencing because you have less pressure. You're not right in front of somebody, right? Maybe that lowers the nervousness, and they're really good at video.
Just
Conference.
can't always read the room. Can't read the entire room a lot of times.
Well, especially if they don't have their camera on, that makes it so difficult. So
Yeah, that's very difficult. It's one of the reasons why we have a 360 camera, so you can see
Yeah.
the entire room.
Hey, you can see
And
everything
you
going
start
on.
to see how things are people paying attention, or are they not? You can see
Yeah.
some of that, and then you can zoom in close when they start speaking.
Well, and one of the things we talked about this on one of the last podcasts actually was getting out of that comfort zone,
Right.
And really
Yeah.
pushing that boundary.
Right.
And do you feel like that's something, if somebody's really good at email pitches, let's say, do you think that they can overcome? Because in general, they're good at pitching. It's just that form of communication. Do you think that they can get better at pitching, let's say, presentation style, right?
First off, everybody can get better.
Yeah.
Can they ever do it to the extent to win a pitch? Not necessarily. It's people who are comfortable in front of people. They're rare to find. That's why when you find a marketing person and you talk to them about what's your role, well, I do marketing, I do sales, I do, event planning, I do all these things, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
You're probably decent at that. You're probably not great at any of it. And you have to hire people to help with that because a marketing person thinks very differently than a salesperson. And sometimes there's some blend in there.
Yeah.
But being able to pitch and present information, there are agencies, they hire that out all the time because they're terrible at it.
Right.
And it's smart. I've seen companies hire. We have a group here, a comedy group here called 4 Day Weekend. I've seen them be hired to pitch an idea to a client for an agency.
Really?
Because it delivers the way they want it to. And then, of course, at the end, the agency's there and they talk through it. But the nuts and bolts of bringing the idea there and breaking down the room are really good at that. And it fit for what they're trying to do. So at the end of the day, you have to do what you need to do to win.
Yeah.
And do what you think it's going to take. But I don't think somebody who may be great at emailing and pitching through a process like that, you not necessarily be good at delivering it face to face. You get nervous.
Yeah.
You get nervous and you're twitching around. You're like, oh my gosh, and this, and it's going to dilute confidence real quick. Why'd you send the amateur? Because it's really not that important to you.
Kind of like the junior team showed up. Yeah.
It's hard, and it's okay if you can preface that, and you have some experience in the room, and you'll be able to tell if somebody's just cutting their teeth, and that has to happen at some point. But you got to pick the right situation for that growth, for both the client and the presenter.
Yeah. So say you have a good idea, right? You find an ideal target audience person.
I feel like I've had one or two of those.
Yeah.
I've done the second part. Okay.
Yeah. How do you now go about putting together that pitch, right? Is there a standardized process where you're like, okay, I start with the outline to make sure I get all my thoughts down, then I move into creative and making it cool, and then I get feedback, or like what's that process look like?
You're kind of talking about the process. I mean,
Okay.
that's kind of it for me, right?
Yeah.
The one thing I do first, though, and the way I think about it is, what's my goal here? Am I going to use a scare tactic to get them on board? Am I going to be super confident in our abilities and deliver that way? Or am I going to go in there and just, from an attitude of I'm just trying to help and I hope it's a good fit?
Yeah.
99% of the time, I'm going in to help.
Yeah.
I'm going to show, hopefully through the presentation, that we can help. Because really, that's what you want from a partner. Overconfidence, and boasting how great you are as an agency. It's about you now, not the client. And it can cause problems when you're working with that agency later on through the process, right? So the presentation is about fit and connection as it is much about the details that you put out there. But step number one, I think you hit it the nail on the head. You got to do an outline. Get your ducks in a row. Start filling in the gaps.
Yeah.
Right. Then have somebody look at design it. You know, you probably have a pre-formed template that you're throwing this stuff into. It's already got some whiz bang changing stuff. Yeah. Maybe it's not all done, but you got it pretty much in place. Here's the flow of the presentation. Now show it to somebody. Right? Let's change it here. Let's do this. This isn't connecting. Move this forward. Now you're working on it together. Now you polish it up. Now it's done. And hopefully you have enough time then to sit on it for a day or two and then enhance it and make it better. You know you can win with this.
Yeah.
After a day or two, you can start to enhance and take it even further.
Yeah.
So that's the process that works the best for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to think of it like a story, right? I'm going to be guiding them through like a journey.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a theater background, so maybe that's where that comes from.
I think that makes sense.
Right? And especially if I'm going to be presenting in person, because I'm like, okay, how do we get interactive? How do I start to pull them into it? How do I, is there questions that could be targeted to not just yes or no, right? Really getting them thinking or... and I think that's one of the other things about people that pitch really well, especially in person or over the phone, not necessarily email, because that's pretty cut dry, right?
Yeah, it's pitching, but it's at a different place at that point. Yeah.
But just being able to adapt and change really quick, and being able to, something said, and then you're like, well, tell me more about that. Why have you always done that?
And that's a chance for you to dig in and draw your audience into the presentation.
Yeah.
That's key. But I think what you said a minute ago makes a lot of sense. The thing that we haven't talked about is your presentation has to be your presentation. If you do my presentation,
it's not going to come off.
It's not going to come off. And if I do yours, it's not going to come off because the way we think and our pathways are different.
Yeah.
But the outcome and the goal and the process is the same.
Yeah.
And that's where you have to, here's how we do our presentations. Now tailor it to a way that you can deliver it effectively.
And I think that's obviously a challenge when you start to present with multiple people. Like you and I have presented together in the past, right?
Right.
Literally the same presentation, but it's, this is your section, this is my section. Yeah. We almost have to do it that way or else it becomes a challenge. And I know there are people out there that, it's tag team and they do it really well and they'll literally bounce off each other during the entire thing.
Right.
And it's crazy to me to see that. I'm like, that's great.
It is.
But it's so difficult to achieve, to be able to do that, like on a regular basis, especially. And so that's one of the things that I know I've always struggled with is really because I like to put it together. Like I like to do the outline. I like to.
Right.
How am I going to? I really do think of it like acting or theater or any of that, right? And really start to build that journey and that story that's being told and. The end result is obviously they sign the contract and then we're good. And
that's a great story.
Yeah, that's Act 4 and that's closing. And so, but no, it's like being able to include other people in that sometimes becomes a challenge because they don't think of it the same way I do, or they don't come into it with the same attitude that I do. Right? Not in a wrong way. Just that they're not thinking of it the exact same way.
Yeah, but I mean, you said it though. It's if you're putting the presentation together and you're owning that, and you're going to bring me in or somebody else in a certain part, you're going to adjust and tailor that for that person and set them up for success.
Yeah,
and you're going to need to do that piece of it, and that's. And I agree with you. That's a great talent you have, but I would say your talent is really getting up and talking in front of that audience. The presentation is really an moving agenda to keep us on point, make us finish on time, things like that, especially for you.
Yeah.
I'm a little long-winded at times, as we've probably seen through the podcast, and it happens.
Yeah.
But you're very good at that part of it. And you can still read the room, but at the end of the day, what you've gotten much better at, and I think it's a benefit for us, is letting that audience become a part of it and being able to draw them into that presentation. At that point, we're not presenting anymore. We're helping, and we're having a discussion in the room.
Right.
That's what I think the pitch is all about.
Well, and you know, one of the whole reasons I got into advertising and marketing was because I just wanted to help other small business owners, right? And so, like, I know that's usually when I go in, one of the biggest goals that I always make sure to include is, like, how do we truly help them achieve what they're trying to do, right? And it's usually those small sentences, right, that are sometimes so hard to get out of a client, where it's like, hey, I'm just trying to get new patients. Done. Keep it that simple, right? And it's like, all right,
don't overcomplicate.
Hey guys, this is how we do this, right? This is how we do this together. This is what the team looks like. This is how we're going to achieve this. This is the budget. This is the timeline. All those things start to come out, but really, it's all based around that one little sentence of, like, I want to get new patients. It's like, done.
Yeah, and even with the big clients, the same thing. If you can really drill down and get that core achievement, you're good.
So do you think there's always one thing that has to be included in every single pitch?
Whew.
So, like, for me, when I'm thinking about, regardless the format, regardless who it is, industry, any of that, right? How much time I have to prepare, anything like that, the very first thing that comes to mind is they have to understand the value, right? We have to be able to go in and be like, this is the value of what we're providing. Do you think there's one thing that always has to be in every single pitch? I know I put you on the spot with that.
No, I'm thinking through it, because there's a couple different things super important, and it's really, you have to talk about schedule, I think.
Okay.
You know, and pitch like pitching an idea, not the elevator, right?
Yeah.
But even the elevator has some elements of this, right? If you want to really, it's hard to deliver this the right way, but you have to talk about a schedule and timeline, realistically, what that looks like, how things can be impacted there. You got to talk about money.
Oh yeah.
That has to be there. Otherwise, everybody just kind of going through the motions, and you're going to have to get to that point anyway. There's not a business out there that works for free, and companies are willing to pay money. So you just got to talk through that piece of it. And the sooner you can have that uncomfortable conversation, the sooner you can make a decision on, oh, well, if that's what we're dealing with, this is what we can do for that. And this is how we would deliver for you. Hope that's a great fit. We think it's the best fit, right? So those are really, they're more elements than they are, has to be in every pitch type of thing.
Yeah.
But I think they have to be there, because it sets the tone for the rest of the relationship. You have to go in thinking you're going to be able to provide them with the most help.
Yeah.
And they're going to see that you are the right fit for them, and they're just that right chemistry. So assume you have that. And then talk about schedule and money, and if all that works out, because that's about where we were thinking, all right, you can't really be in a better spot than that. Then the next agency comes in, or the next elevator pitch comes in, and they go, let me think about all those parameters, and I'm going to pick the best one, because they can all do it.
Yeah.
So, but I think that has to come out every single time. The sooner the better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say another thing is probably just the way it's delivered.
Pretty important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, it's going to be $50,000. You got it?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay. Something like this can probably be around 50,000. Let me tell you why. This is what it's about. Does that align with what you were thinking? No. Yes. Well, and you can tell.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say it's less. Okay. It's not about how much money you have. Where the first delivery is probably about how much money you have.
Yeah.
Does $1 million scare you? Right?
Well, but you can also take the other approach, right? Of, okay, let me ask you this. If I solve this problem for you, what's the value of that for you? Like, monetarily value for that, right? I bring you new patients. Let's say it's 100 new patients a month. What does that equate to, right?
That's a great way to look at it, yeah.
Right? Okay, so let's say my cost for me to do that for you is 20% of whatever it's going to cost you. Do you like an 80% return? I mean, is that somewhere you want to be around, right?
Right.
And most business people, I think, can get their heads around that very quickly and be like, yes.
And you're talking data and numbers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you have to deliver on those numbers at that point.
Absolutely. Right.
And it's a great way to go, okay, let's talk about, and I think it's a good point, let's talk about the result, not the process.
Right.
You're paying us for a process. No, you're really paying us for a result.
Yeah.
What's that result?
Yeah.
It's a great way to look at it.
So we'd love to hear from you guys. Get some thoughts from you on how you pitch. Maybe you have a really unique thing that you do. We'd love to hear.
Curveball, got a fastball. Different kind of pitching, I'm guessing.
Oh my gosh.
That's kind of dad stuff working in there a little bit.
A little bit. So, but no, we'd love to hear from you guys. If there's maybe a thing that you always make sure is in your pitches, or a method that maybe we didn't even talk about, right? Maybe somebody has a VR method that's really cool. We'd love to hear about that. But anyways, leave us a comment below, or send us a message on whatever channel you're listening on, or just send us an email, agency@theglintstandard.com. Thank you guys so much.